when I started seminary, I had not been in graduate school for many years. I was before computers in class and little blue books that you use to take tests. I didn't know anything about any of that. So I was a bit apprehensive. So I countered that apprehension by making some promises to myself. Number one, I promised myself I was not going to panic, no matter how difficult the assignment seemed. Okay, check. Number two, I was probably going to be older than most of my professors, so I was going to keep a sense of humor about any situation in which I found myself. Check. And number three, I was never going to be afraid to ask even the most stupid, inane questions. Remember how you were in school and you was like, I can't ask that because everybody, I said, not going to do that. Check. So my first semester, I'm sitting there with my new computer and my pencils and my paper and everything, and I had 4 courses, and I was studying, among other things, a course in Christian education. And it was a wonderful course, and it was with a teacher I adored. Her name was Dr. Elizabeth Condy Frazier. Brilliant woman. Number one, she had a beautiful soprano voice, and she would often start class singing a hymn. And there was a piano in our class, and she knew that I played the piano, and she would start to sing, and she'd go, Bill, just go find me. And so there she and I would go, and we had this bond, and we'd be doing the hymn in class. As I said before, she was a PhD who had grown up in Spanish Harlem, and she called herself a New York Rican. And since I had lived in New York for quite a while, I knew exactly what that was, and so we also had that bond. Plus, she just had street savvy. She could go from the most esoteric concepts to a real in-your-face way of explaining things that kept the class challenged and entertained. She was one with us. I just loved being back in graduate school. So one day, she was professing as to how we should approach unpacking theology in the ecclesial or church setting. She was relating changing beliefs to the Wesleyan quadrilateral. Now, you all know what the Wesleyan quadrilateral is, right?
Sure.
Neither did I. So after she used that term for about the 3rd time, I remembered the promise that I had made to myself, and I raised my hand and I said, Dr. Condy Frazier, what is the Wesleyan quadrilateral? Now maybe she thought she and I were so close that she could tease me and it would be okay. But in my mind, all of a sudden, if we had been in a horror movie, the music would have come up, the lights would have darkened, as she looked over her glasses at me and said, you don't know what the Wesleyan quadrilateral is? And I said, no, Professor, I don't, thinking, that's why I asked. That's why I'm paying all this money to learn. I didn't say that. I just said, no, Professor, I don't. She said, well, then I expect you to ask one of your younger classmates who does, or at least do some research and report back to me next week. And the bubble was burst. I wasn't embarrassed like I might have been as a child when a teacher would say something like that to me, but I was mad. That sense of the classroom being a safe place to learn was injured. Even though I respected her, and we made up later, it was a long time before I trusted her again. In this text that Cheryl read to us, although the Sadducees and the Pharisees and all the other groups, the Herodians, the temple authorities, we've been talking about them for the last few weeks, had all joined together to try to silence Jesus, their own relationship with each other was not especially easy. Why? They didn't trust each other. They had different theologies. Some wanted to reform the temple thought and procedure. Some wanted to keep it the same. Others wanted to return to an earlier time. Before this passage that Cheryl had read to us, the Sadducees had just come to Jesus protesting that there was no such thing as a resurrection. And this is how they did it. They tried to trick Jesus with a riddle, really, asking, "So, teacher, if a woman is married and she's widowed several times on earth, whose wife will she be in the resurrection?" Dun, dun, dun. Jesus responded, "You have read Scripture, but you have not interpreted correctly. God's realm will not be a further continuation of this life. No one will be given in marriage in God's house as they are here. As for your charge that there is no resurrection, God has said, not I was, but God had said, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. 3 generations come and gone, yet they all live on in me." So the Sadducees were silenced. Enter their uneasy associates, the Pharisees, those known for knowing the law the best. And from among their ranks they put forth a lawyer, a debater, who asked, as Cheryl read to us this morning, "Master, teacher, what commandment is the greatest?" And Jesus answers with something that good Jews know as the Shema. Baruch atah Eloheinu Adonai. Baruch atah Adonai Elonai Echad. Which means, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." Echad is an especially interesting word because it is translated one, united, even in diversity. One, united, even in diversity. Therefore, Deuteronomy, I can never say this word. Deuteronomy, there we go. Yeah. Deuteronomy 6 goes on to state, "You shall love the Lord, this one who is one, even in diversity, your God, with all of your heart, and with all of your soul, and with all of your mind." And then, not being content to leave them with that text that they had learned as little boys in Shula or Hebrew school, Jesus reaches into the text of a book perhaps written for the priests and the Levites, the book that many of us have used to condemn and shut out of our churches those who are different from ourselves, the book of Leviticus. Jesus reaches into the 19th chapter and comes up with the 18th verse. "And you shall love your neighbor as yourself." As yourself.